Good day, fellow deal makers. Welcome to the Deal Scout. On today's show, we're going to have a conversation with a lawyer slash VC. Really cool guy. I want you to meet my friend Brent. Brent, welcome to the show.
Hey Josh, good to see you, man.
Absolutely. All right. So you don't look like a typical attorney, just starting
Thank you.
off. So for people who might be listening in just on the podcast and maybe not watching this on YouTube later on, you got full arm tattoos,
I do. Yeah.
right? Super cool. And you look like a guitarist rock star, right? You look like you could be in a rock band, but you're also an attorney and a venture capitalist. Like, who are you, Brent? Like, this is
Ah,
you're a fantastic person. Who are you?
wow, thanks, man. That means that's a very kind thing for you to say. I don't know, bro. I mean, I was always I wasn't the weird kid. My high school wasn't big enough to have too many cliques. So I graduated high school with like 70 people, right? So in my graduating class up in Howland, Maine. And so there weren't enough people for there to be like geeks and jocks and all this. We all had to play multiple roles. But so one of my roles was to be the kid who dressed a little weird. Like I didn't have piercings or tattoos back in high school, but I was the guy who would, like, I don't know. You're talking back in the early 80s here, like, I'd wear a tie with blue jeans, which at the time was like, woohoo, that's crazy, dude. Why are
A
you wearing
freak.
exactly?
Awesome, man.
And it's a legit question. Why would you wear a tie to high school, you moron? But anyway, I guess when I started practicing law after doing a tour of duty as a computer scientist, I very much didn't want to be standard issue. I didn't want to be your father's Oldsmobile. And my clients were like me. My clients had green hair and tattoos and piercings. And we're talking San Francisco here in the 1990s, in the first dot-com bubble. And if you walked into the room with some of our clients back then in a suit and tie, you'd get laughed out. It was a real, obviously, it was a time of, as we call it now, irrational exuberance, and there was a lot of crazy stuff going on in the market. But one thing that did happen back in the 90s is this breakaway from the need to be a traditionalist. Again, there was a lot of people selling a lot of snake oil, a lot of people who shouldn't have got investment capital because they weren't really producing anything valuable. And that's not the stuff I'm talking about. I'm just talking about the stuff that I think we take for granted today, which is one of the things we do at my law firm, Forex Legal. We don't have a dress code. We don't care what you wear to the office. We're not interested in your look, your style, your fashion. We're interested in your brain and how excellent your work product is, and how fresh your mind is. And the way you look and dress is just absolutely irrelevant to your value as a lawyer and indeed as a human being. So I've tried to live my life that way, and I have to admit that I've gotten a lot of business as a lawyer by not looking like one.
Yeah. No, it's super cool. When you came to Ocala, you know, it was just it was so cool to hang out with you and your team, right? One of the things that you pride yourself at Corex Legal is you really care about your clients, like we're one of your clients, and you really care about your attorneys,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Why the heck is that so important to you?
Well, I mean, first of all, any employer who's not taking care of their employees is doing it wrong, if you ask me. I don't care how many, how easy it is to exploit the workers. It's just not an ethical thing to do. At Corex Legal, it's multiplied because this profession, practicing law, is non-trivial. It is an exceedingly difficult job, and when done poorly, it can get you in serious trouble. You can lose your license to practice law if you don't practice law properly. And there's some stress, with it really can't be good enough. It's got to be perfect pretty much every time. If you send a client, a contract that's only got a few errors, right? Then one of those errors might end up getting your client sued or something like that. So it's pretty much got to be perfect every time. So my point is, it's a high stress job which requires relatively formidable intellectual capacity, and fortitude to be able to sit there for hours some days and get the work product done. So the work experience needs to be pleasant and humane and lovely. These people are working for me and my partner Greg Karch, And we're honored to have their presence, so we want to treat them well. So we give them 4 weeks of vacation every year, secretaries all the way up to partners, two of which are mandatory, right? Like, so we insist that you got to take at least 2 weeks of vacation. We have good benefits. We try really hard to go overboard. We care about families and kids, so we pay for all that stuff in the insurance space and everything. And we really, approach our people, both lawyers and staff, not with a sort of let's have an annual review and tell you what you did wrong and what you need to improve, but more of a, do you like this? Are you having fun? Is this enjoyable to you? Is this fulfilling to you? Do you want to do something else? Do you want to take a class? Do you want to learn to be a different kind of lawyer or a different kind of administrator? Do you need a sabbatical? What would make we want people to get up in the morning really jazzed to come to work, to the point where it's not so much a job, but it's just a great experience for them. I can't think of a worse, and I've been there, right? I suppose we all have. We're in that situation where you wake up first thing in the morning and you're just filled with dread because you got to go do a job that you hate. I never want to be an employer of somebody who feels that way.
Yeah.
And obviously there's only so much we can do. If you come to me and you say you want to sculpt with found metal, well, good luck to you. We'll do your copyright work for you, but so obviously that kind of thing has its limits. But yeah, Jesus, I mean, the life is hard enough without having to deal with an employer of all things that's insane and irrational and no fun to deal with. So we try to be just decent.
Yeah. Now, what about we're talking with deal makers here, investors and business owners, and what about the bottom line? Like, all that sounds good, but like, how do you? Because you have a new firm, right? Like, this is relatively new. Like, as you guys are building this, and culture's super important to you, and people, like, you have a very interesting business model that I don't think a lot of law firms are approaching, right? Like,
that's correct.
Explain that to us, because I think that's
so
important.
most law firms bill by the hour, right? Sometimes they get an advanced retainer, and then they do the work and they bill by the hour. Sometimes if they're good at what they do, they will generally advise the client as to a range of what to expect. This is going to be a $10,000 project, it's going to be a $20,000 project, what have you. We've taken that one step further, and we've more or less eliminated the billable hour as the metric by which we value our work or get paid, except in certain circumstances, namely dispute resolution and litigation, where it's just really tough to do that on a fixed fee or a project by project basis. So our litigators still bill by the hour. But the rest of us transactional folks, whether we're doing trademarks or licensing or corporate formation or a venture capital transaction, we generally bill that in advance on a fixed fee basis. So we take our fee, and that's the fee. You're done, unless there's dramatic, unforeseen circumstances that show up in the deal, requiring, as I say, unforeseen, excessive dedication of resources or time or attention. That's all you pay. You pay that fee, and you're done. And we've set those fees intelligently based on, I have 28 years experience practicing law, and I pretty much know if you send me, if you want me to file a trademark application, it's going to be about $1,500 plus the fee, and that's a fair fee to me. It's a fair fee to you. Sometimes we'll miss it. Sometimes we'll get lucky and we'll only, it goes back and forth. But on average, we've set our fees to be relatively fair. And the bottom line is real, of course. I mean, look, one of the things we're doing at CoreX Legal, and as you mentioned, we started the firm this year, actually on April Fool's Day of this year. And, I pause to note that when you start a company on April Fool's Day, if for any reason it doesn't work out, you can always say,
it was a joke.
it was an April Fool. But no, of course not. We actually rushed to start the firm on April 1st, just so we could say we started on April Fool's Day. But one of the things we're trying to do, and this is still a work in progress, is we're really trying to establish, Greg Karch, my business partner, and I, and Jeff, our COO, who you've met a couple times, we're really trying to establish a core set of core values that we as humans and we as a firm care about and will herald and will abide by. Things like honesty, things like ethics, things like being humane, things like working in harmony. And then the hope is that all of our processes and procedures, whether it's how we treat our employees, how we treat our clients, our billing practices, all sort of fall logically out of that set of core values. And whenever we find ourselves in a situation where we're making a a decision of any particular moment, right? Where we say, this should work this way. We have to check ourselves and say, wait a minute, how does that fall out of our core values, right? Does it do this? Does it do the things we care about? If it does, then maybe it's an acceptable procedure and we should normalize it somewhat. So we're really trying to be consistent there so that we're not flailing willy-nilly. But obviously, one of our core values has to be profitability, right? We can't work for free. Someone's got to put mac and cheese in my kids' mouths, and that guy is me. So yeah, we have to do this in a way that's sustainable long term. And I'm happy to report, we're getting it done at present. We've been doing this now since April, and we're flying. Things are good. The bloodbath in the crypto markets has cast a tad of a gloom over our ability to grow as quickly as we had hoped, but we expect those holdings to bounce back before too long. People are, just as an aside, people are all panicked about the crypto markets right now, and it's like I don't know if you've noticed, but it identically mirrors what happened to the internet back in the 90s, as we had this period of massive gold rush, massive irrational exuberance, people investing in stuff that wasn't worth the money. Finally, there was a sobering moment. The world woke up and everything crashed. And then after really a couple of years, like, it wasn't quick. It was 2 or 3 years there. We had 9/11, and that was gloomy. And then it was really the mid 2000s, early 2000s, before things started happening again, like the iPhone suddenly happened and stuff like that. And then, of course, we had the recession of the late 2010s, 2009, 2010. Which caused us to slow down again. My point is that we may be in the doldrums with crypto for a couple of years because it went through that same trajectory, right? Where everyone's doing ICOs and everyone's getting rich and everyone's saying it's the Wild West and the law doesn't apply. And it turns out it does. Just ask the chairman of the SEC. And so it's regrouping again. I have high hopes in crypto and blockchain. I think, honestly, again, I'm rambling here, but one of the problems, I think, with blockchain is that there are a lot of great business ideas out there that might ride on a blockchain, but the customers don't need to know that. They don't need to know it's blockchain-based, crypto-based, NFT, whatever it is. They just want to get something done. They just want to get something done in the world. An artist wants to get paid for their work or something like that. And I think putting the focus on the tech makes it a little stilted, quite frankly. But anyway, yes, we at Corex Legal are definitely in it to make as much money as we humanly can, but we're also in it to give back as much as possible as well. And we've got numerous strategies in place for that. In fact, one of the things we're thinking of is to allocate a certain amount of money to each employee, both lawyers and staff, each year for them to donate to the charity of their choice.
Yeah,
on an annual basis. Yeah, that way we're not setting any political tone or deciding on a firm-wide basis where charitable dollars should go for everybody, but we're just letting them make that as an individual choice. And they can do it, they can make their donation on their personal behalf or on behalf of the firm, or they can do it anonymously if they want to. It's really up to them. So that's, we got a lot of ideas in place like that. I've worked at a number of law firms, big ones, very big ones, some of the biggest in the world, and some small ones. I had a small firm of my own back in San Francisco in the 90s. And I can tell you, they're not always easy places to work, but they can be. They really can be if people care about each other, raise each other up as human beings, and learn to work collaboratively. Unfortunately, one of the things that happens in the practice of law is that it becomes competitive, especially at lower levels when you're just starting out. You want to be the superstar. You want to be better than the other kid. And so one of the things we did this summer, we had 3 summer associates in the firm. The law is one of the last great apprenticeships where we actually draw on law students to come into the firm during the summer to learn how actual law firms work, because they don't really learn that in law school. And so we had 3 this summer. And what we did was, in many cases, instead of assigning work to them individually, we assigned work, a particular project would be assigned to all 3 of them as a group. And we'd say, here, figure this out together, collaborate on it. You decide how to allocate the work, if at all, and then produce one work product for us that you're all 3 authors of. And it worked miraculously. Instead of, you do this project and you do this project, and then we'll see who's smarter. We actually brought 3 human beings together who knew some stuff, and they figured out how to work as a group, as a team, if you will. So that's what we're trying to do, man. We're some of it we're shooting in the dark, some of it we're going from experience, but the watchword is just humane. We're just trying to be we're trying to create more joy than suffering in the world, Josh.
Well, I
You know.
like it, and it is fun to work with you guys. You said you've worked with big law firms, small law firms. You had your own in San Francisco. Why? Let's start here. Why did you even get into law? The kid, wearing a tie in high school. You know, why'd you even choose law?
So, all right. So I was in grad school. I was at MIT, actually, at the MIT Media Lab in 1989, 1990, 1991. And I was very much happy to stay. I was going to stay and get my PhD. I was going to go off and I was probably going to work at Pixar and do animation or something like that, which would have been maybe Industrial Light and Magic at the time or something. But anyway, um, uh, and then things started happening in the world that I started taking an interest in. I had been pretty solid, I'd majored in computer science as an undergrad. And so I'd also been a practicing software engineer. So I was pretty much a math geek, right? I mean, and everything I did had a right answer and you could check your work. But I didn't really pay a lot of attention, even though my undergraduate degree was a Bachelor of Arts in computer science, and I had to take the humanities and the social sciences and all that. I found myself at a bit of a loss as to how to have conversations that were happening on the internet at the time. The internet existed before the web, by the way. It was a thriving place, and people were talking about software patents, and they were talking about government involvement in technology companies. And the Electronic Frontier Foundation was just getting started at about then. And people were having all these conversations about how society and technology should work together. And I found myself rather bereft and unable to have an intelligent because I didn't know anything about civics, really. I mean, I knew the basic, three branches of government and all that stuff, but I had no training in anything other than the technology. And I decided I really probably needed to go learn more about the other stuff. Like it occurred to me that the law is really the code base for running a country. And I knew code and I knew how to hack code and I knew how to make it more elegant, more efficient, more interesting. And so I went to law school to go learn to hack the law, really, and and interpret some of that code and get to know what the Constitution really means. And I had an unfortunate and thankfully brief flirtation with sort of lowercase L libertarianism for a while at about that time. It's something that technology people do. You get to a point in your life where you're like, wait a minute, what's all this bloat and what's all this crazy stuff and what's all this power residing in these people other than me? I think we should be a strict constructionist and the Constitution says this and we should abide by that. It's a very software geek thing to do. Like, let's look at the code written in the Constitution, look at the world that exists today. Those aren't the same. We need to fix this problem.
Yeah.
And literally that philosophy leads you to something like there should be no public schools and there should be no public roads and there should be no public firefighters and everything should be privatized and the market will determine what's valuable and what's not. And of course, when you grow up a little bit, you realize that the market doesn't do that very well. The market actually does some things really poorly. Like, can you imagine if all firefighters were privatized and you had to pay for them to come to your house at 3 a.m. and put out your fire? It's not something that actually leads to the progress of society. But without getting any more political, I decided to go to law school to learn about something I just had no idea how it worked. I didn't know how the law worked. And while I was there, I realized I was pretty good at bridging that gap between the technology and the business. Because there were, as I say, there were a lot of discussions going on about how technology and society should work together. A lot of business people and a lot of lawyers were saying a lot of things, and a lot of engineers were saying a lot of other things, and they weren't necessarily understanding one another. And there was a sort of impedance mismatch in the knowledge that one side had versus the other. So ultimately, my tour of duty in law school was to help bridge the gap between what lawyers know and what engineers know. And I did spend some time as a clerk, a summer associate at the Electronic Frontier Foundation, actually, and did some work to help modify the laws in Massachusetts dealing with computer crime, and that was very enriching. But it turns out that if you can speak the language of engineers and you can speak the language of lawyers, you make a great business lawyer for technology companies. And so by the time I graduated law school in 1994, The web was starting to happen. Things were starting to get real, and that 90s bubble was starting to get inflated. So I went straight to San Francisco and started practicing technology law. And I've been doing it now, since I say, for 28 years. And it's been good, right? Because, the clients, if you can relate to your lawyer, we get the same jokes. I understand all the acronyms. I've written the code before. I've done the entrepreneurial thing myself. It's nice for the clients to be able to sort of relate to me and my team as lawyers, because we've walked in their shoes. Um, yeah, so that's basically how that worked out.
So now you have your own law firm, right? You did this in San Francisco, had your own firm. You took a break and you worked for some big groups, right? Like the biggest in the world.
Well, I actually started at one of the biggest law firms in the world. My first job was at a firm called Weil Gotshal,
Okay.
a big New York-based firm with offices around the world. Wonderful firm, had great experience, and because I was there for 2 or 3 years and I was working for AOL, and I was working for Time Warner
Yeah.
and all these cool companies, News Corporation. Um, got such great experience that's when we started Britton Silberman in San Francisco. I was 3 years out of law school when I started Britton Silberman, to do technology law for the .com world. And we just timed it, couldn't have timed it better if we tried. I must say we've been very lucky. We were very lucky because we didn't necessarily know this was coming, but we just rode the .com wave. And 3 years later, in 2000, we sold Britton Silberman to a bigger law firm, that sort of scooped us up. And by that time, we had hundreds of clients. We had a couple dozen lawyers. We were very busy, very active. And as I say, we sold the firm in the summer of 2000. So about 5 minutes later, the market started to
Holy
turn. The
moly.
technology work started to dry up and stuff. And I'm sorry, you were getting to a question that I don't know you completely finished, but I'll say that, in the wake of the sort of 9/11 early 2000s, I spent some time in New York City. I actually moved to New York City like a week before 9/11, so that cast a different kind of shadow on my whole life experience. And it was just easy, starting a law firm back in the 90s as a single man. I could sleep under my desk. I didn't have a wife or kids to worry about. I might have been making 30 grand, my first year at Britton Silberman. But whatever, it didn't matter. We were building something, and it paid off handsomely in the end. Um, but that kind of risk is a little more daunting once you get married and have kids, and you're trying buying a house, you got a mortgage, the whole thing. So it turned out that the opportunity to start another law firm and be a legal entrepreneur again sort of circled back on me earlier this year, and it was time again to make that make sense. So we did.
So in the process, you've seen a lot of companies, and this goes along with the question. When you started your firm, CoreX Legal, you've seen technology from early on to where it is now. So you've seen a lot of cool things. You've also seen a lot of booms, and you've seen some busts. You've seen a
Yep.
lot of things go. And yet, you are really excited about working with startups.
Yeah.
You even have your own venture group.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've seen a lot. I guess explain to us like why startups. What are some of the other specializations that you guys focus on? But why'd you choose that?
It's a great question. I will tell you that when I started in computing, when I first logged into my first internet connected computer in 1982, we didn't call it the internet yet, by the way. It was called BitNet, or just
And by the way, I was born in '81.
yeah. So you were around, you remember.
I was there.
Um, no, so I was in 82. I was a sophomore in high school.
Yeah.
Went down to the local college, University of Maine, and had a friend who was in college already and logged in. It was a paper terminal. Okay. Paper was scrolling through my terminal. Spent my first, 5, 6 years in computing with 80 by 24 green screens. That was the standard. So I guess when I say that, to note that technology does not always lead to entrepreneurship, but it does lead to creativity, because all the people around me were publishing things and creating things and even inventing things as I'm a college student, because we were some of the first people on the internet. And so people started we had some of the first chats where you know, like you could actually get on and talk to people from different states and different countries if they were technologically sophisticated enough to know how to use what we eventually called the internet back then. Um, you know, oddly enough, I came down from the University of Maine in 1985 for spring break to meet some kids at UCF here in Central Florida to celebrate spring break with them on Daytona Beach. And the entirety of our relationship until I showed up at Orlando Airport had been modulated on the internet. And so it was just what happens when technology enables things. People figure out how to do new things, and that's why I do it. Okay, because entrepreneurship is only one step from that. Once you've got people who are thinking, wow, look at all the potential, look what we can do, look at the progress we can inject into the world, that eventually leads to entrepreneurship. And that's where you need business, and that's where you need lawyers, and that's where you need investors, and all the machinery that we have in place. And we're lucky in this country to have this machinery in place. But if you can demonstrate that you've got a good idea that'll make money, we can put you on the conveyor belt, man. We can get you, you know, maybe it turns into a rocket ride, maybe it doesn't. But we've got the machinery to help you. We've got people to help you, and it's so I do it because it's fascinating, and I get to play with new toys every day, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, look, we have some clients, big companies that send us a lot of work, and they make it rain, and we do deal after deal after deal for them, and it's kind of the same deal every time, and that's fine. We need some cash cows and stuff like that. That's fine. But the entrepreneurs are where the magic happens. Man, it's where you get to sit across the table from the, you know, figuratively or virtually, literally or virtually, from crazy people, right?
Yeah.
Who are just insane. They've broken from the herd. I mean, you've heard me say this before, but you know, we humans come from schools of fish and herds of animals for whom sameness is a survival trait. And we have this visceral disdain when one of our brethren or sistren jump from the pack and go do their own thing and strike out on their own, because they're going to get eaten by a lion if they're not careful. And we just want sameness. But not, entrepreneurs don't do that, man. They figured out they're just crazy enough to jump from the pack, do their own thing, dance to their own drummer, and really have the passion that they can change the world or make it a slightly better place. Because that's what entrepreneurship, let's face it, is all about. It's about progress. It's about the next cool thing. I didn't know I needed this until Steve Jobs made it and sold it to me. And now, of course, like many people, I can't live without it. You know, and it's invention and innovation that actually changes the world for the better most of the time and gets us rushing headlong into the future. And so it's just such a fun sector to work with. Now, not all entrepreneurs can pay the bill, and that's where the venture arm of our business comes in. And if we like you and you've got a good pitch deck and you've got some solid market validation, let me say that again, if you've got some solid market validation, which is to say you can demonstrate to me that customers actually want to buy your product or service once you launch it, then yeah, we can figure out a way to help you get your legal work done without having to stroke a check on day one. So yeah, I love these people, man. They're where the new stuff comes from. They're where the new toys happen.
So specializations for your firm, startups, and all the issues and craziness that happens with them, right? Trademarks.
I'll run it down for you, because
Okay.
I got this down to a
Yeah, and you could probably do it better than me, anyways.
So look, we will represent entrepreneurs of any stripe. We will represent technology companies of any stripe, but our strength is in technology startups. So right from the start, you know, you can't form a company unless it has a name, and you can't pick a name for your company unless you do a trademark search, if you want the name of your company to have anything to do with your eventual brand name. So talking to a lawyer right off the bat, the first thing we need to care about is what we're going to name your company when we form it. We do your formation, we do your venture funding deals, seed round, Series A, whatever, what have you. We do mergers and acquisitions. So when it's time to sell your company, any capital transaction we can handle involving the funding of the company or its sale. And then we do full suite of intellectual property protection, so patents, copyrights, trademarks, trade secrets, all the documents associated with intellectual property ownership, all the documents associated with the governance of the company, bylaws and articles and things like that, as well as the co-founder relationships with the company and with themselves. Very important. A lot of companies get started on a handshake, and that's fine, but you really need to think in terms of what if you don't have or your business partner doesn't have the gumption for a startup 9 months down the road? What if things happen more slowly? What if somebody gets pregnant? I mean, there's all these things you gotta pay attention to. And then finally, any commercial transaction that a company could engage in. If there's a contract involved, and there should always be a contract involved, we can help structure and draft and negotiate it. And I know I said finally, but there's more. We also do all the internet related stuff, terms of service on your website, privacy policy, data security. If you have a breach, we help you navigate that sort of crisis management. And we do some company focused employment work. So if there's an accusation of wrongful termination or sexual harassment, God forbid, or something like that, we can help the company defend those claims. And we do a limited amount of litigation. We do have a litigation partner, and at present, the litigation practice is modest, but is undergoing, I would say, measured growth. We handle intellectual property disputes. We handle contract disputes. As I say, we'll defend the company against claims from employees. And we'll look at anything. We're not a particularly closed door firm. Our technology focus, by nature of our backgrounds, tends to be digital and internet and crypto and blockchain. I don't have particularly, I was talking earlier about how, my clients, we get the same jokes and we understand all the acronyms. I don't enjoy that kind of camaraderie with, say, biotechnologists, right? So I've never been a chemist. I've never poked a cell with one of those cell pokey things that they do. So I think our technology focus is largely limited to digital and computing and internet, but we're certainly happy to learn about anything else, because here's the trick: where the science or the technology or the engineering may differ is almost irrelevant in many cases to the business deals that you're going to be doing. It may mean certain things, like, if you're going to be developing a drug, then your investors have to have a different perspective about how soon you're going to be profitable, because it's probably going to take you 10 years to turn a profit on a drug development startup. So that's woven into some of the tapestry there. But I'm still gonna write the same articles of incorporation or certificate of incorporation. I'm still gonna write the same bylaws. We're still gonna have the same questions about who governs the company and who gets to make decisions and how the board votes and things like that. So we can do a whole lot of legal work for companies, even if we secretly don't always understand the ins and outs of their technology. But we do try.
Yeah. Why'd you choose that name for your what's your venture group's name?
Corex Ventures.
Super cool. So you have Corex Legal, Corex Ventures. Why
Yeah.
Corex? Like what was the impetus of that?
Honestly, so law firms are typically named after the founding partners. My firm in San Francisco was named Britton Silberman, and eventually Britton Silberman and Cervantes before we sold it. And that's sort of been the historical trend. In fact, in many jurisdictions, it was probably mandated historically that the names of the partners be on the name of the firm. That's not the case anymore, and you can brand your firm however you see fit. When Greg Karch came to me, Greg and I used to work together. He was part of my team at my prior firm for a couple of years. We did a number of deals together, and he came back and said, "Hey, we should probably jump out and do this ourselves." He had already developed the Corex brand for a couple other projects that he was working on, and we kind of looked at it and said, "It's kind of nifty. I think we should call ourselves Corex Legal, and then do Corex Ventures on the side." And it stuck, and I think people dig it. You got to be careful showing a picture of your baby to people, because they'll tell you your baby's beautiful when your baby's ugly.
Yeah.
But I think people dig it, and I think it means more. It's kind of sexier than Britton Karch or Karch Britton. It's got a certain funkiness to it. My only problem with our brand is that because there's an X in the domain name, for a while we were getting spam trapped. Every time we sent an email, everyone regarded it as, or all the filters regarded it as junk. But they're starting to learn now that it's not that. So
Yeah. So your venture group, you're working with a tech startup, and they can't afford some of the process to build a cap table or to go fundraising or whatever. And you guys say, okay, here's an option, right? We believe in what you do. maybe we'll take some equity in the business, right? What have you found? Do most entrepreneurs, are they for that, or do you sense a lot of resistance to that? What's a common response to that?
It depends where they are.
Yeah.
It depends where they are. For most people, the concept of effectively free legal work in exchange for equity is a very easy decision for them to make, because we're going to give them, we're going to end up giving them 20, 30, $40,000 worth of resources in exchange for a fairly modest amount of stock. I don't think we've ever taken more than 3% in interest in a company. Occasionally, we'll take, if they have other assets, by the way, we'll take interest in their tokens as well if they're a fintech or a blockchain company. So we do a combination of that. Sometimes we'll do a safe, an investment instrument in the company as though we've written them a check. We generally do that at a premium. So if we say, look, we're going to give you 1 year worth of unpaid legal services in exchange for, now normally during a year I would expect a startup company to get billed in the $40,000 to $50,000 range in terms of legal, but we'll do $100,000 safe, as a premium on the fact that we're not getting cash. So that's the kind of dynamic. Most people, we fully present this as an option. I mean, this is not a demand that we make by any means. It's like, if you want to pay cash, you can pay cash. If you can't pay cash or don't want to pay cash, this is an option for you, but it's not mandatory. We're only going to do this for companies that we strongly believe in, that have demonstrated, as I say, some fundamentals in terms of our expectations. We need to see market validation. That's just huge. We need to see that there's a market for the stuff. So that's how that works. And I would say, in answer to your question, it's very rare that people won't opt for the investment option. I should note that from time to time we do write checks as well. If we really believe in something, and they need cash for other reasons, like they need to hire a CPA or they need to do some other stuff, we can do legal services as well as write a check in exchange for, some kind of instrument or something like that. So
do you guys have it set up as kind of a traditional venture group where, you have you guys are the GPs and you have LPs that are investing money in it, or is it?
No, it's just us.
Okay, copy that.
No, it's just us.
So you guys are true investor, investing your own money, your own firm's money, right? So it's not, you're not working on behalf of a LP.
No, yeah. We haven't gone out to build a fund. This is just our separate entity for dealing with the times when we either individually, as people, or as the firm, want to invest in. My daughter's getting home from school.
Hello.
Invest in the company for the reasons we stated. However, it's not without the bounds of possibility that we could consider a more traditional fund where we go seek investors and actually build a more traditional fund. The problem here is, Josh, I've tried to start probably half a dozen companies myself over the past 28 years practicing law. And it turns out that I run a very busy law practice. So the idea of actually having another enterprise that's taking up my time and attention on nights and weekends is just ludicrous. It never works out. One of my first rules to entrepreneurs is you don't do it part-time. You're unlikely to succeed if entrepreneurship is your part-time job for a long period of time. And that is a necessity for me if I'm to do something on the side. So running an actual venture fund and being responsible to LPs and actually doing stuff, it's not a viable option for me. We're doing okay with it.
Yeah, what I like about it is you guys have skin in the game. When you see a cool and crazy entrepreneur who's doing some stuff, but you believe in it, then you guys are willing to put skin in the game, whether it's sweat equity, worked equity, or even some capital. That I like that.
Yeah. I mean, we're not, I'm going to be clear. It's the exception rather than the rule. Okay. We don't make the offer to every client. And they gotta be something. Okay. They gotta have something going on for us to just say, we'll give you. Now look, as time goes by and, our fortunes expand, I think we can be a little more generous here and there, and we can maybe spend some time and attention on folks that haven't maybe made their bones yet, or don't have that market validation, or don't have whatever. But I want to be clear that you got to have the goods if you want free legal work from Corex Legal.
Yeah, right. Now, This is awesome. One of your favorite things to say is market validation. When you
Turns
were
out, yeah,
when you were here on the panel, you were like market validation, right? Like that is like it is so important to you. Like this is softball pitch to you though. Why is that so
okay,
important
yeah.
to you?
So look, starting a company is kind of like a scientific experiment, okay? And I didn't invent these concepts; these precede me from, but uh, you don't hear because here's how we used to do entrepreneurship, okay? Back in, let's say, 10, 15 years ago, we used to think of an idea. Oh my God, we've got this great business idea. We should let private citizens be cab drivers in their cars. And what we would do is we would say, can't tell anybody. We got to keep it a secret. Can't socialize it. Can't talk to anybody because someone's going to steal it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go and we're going to start a company. We're going to write some code and we're going to get investors and we're going to get a trademark and a patent and we're going to build the thing and build it and build it and then we're going to launch and we're going to cross our fingers and hope that people buy it.
Yeah.
And in the case of Uber, it turns out to be a very good idea, but 99% of those efforts don't necessarily work that successfully. And so the trick now is you think of your idea and you socialize it and you start talking to people. Because if people can steal your idea that easily, then it's probably not much of an idea, first of
Yeah.
all.
Or you're not the
Second of
right
all,
person, right?
you need to have a public version of your presentation. You need to be able to talk to people. You need to be able to pitch. You don't need to tell them the intimate details or the deep, dark secrets or how the code works. But you need to be able to say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about, allowing people to get gig economy work based on, being a cab driver in their own car? Would you pay for that? Would you use that? Do you think that's a good idea? And you got to be careful because, like I said about the baby picture earlier, everyone wants to say your baby's beautiful. Nobody wants to tell you your baby's ugly. And so when you go up to somebody and you say, hey, do you think we should do this thing? A lot of them are going to say, yeah, good luck, man. That's awesome. So you really have to have a conversation with your potential customers and you really need to ask them, look, do you have a migraine headache that this can be the Advil for? Because if so, you'll probably pay for the Advil, right? And that's what you want to sell them is not what you think is a good idea, not what your gut thinks is a good idea, but what your customers are literally telling you they will pay for. They will purchase this thing if
Yeah.
you build it, and that's your market validation. Is actually going to people and having them sign up for a beta, maybe even having them swipe their credit card that you won't charge until the alpha release, but they're locked in. They're like, oh my God, please build this. As a matter of fact, instead of making it pink over here, why don't you make it blue? Because I got a nerdy nerd that fits. So that kind of customer interaction, what is why I call it a startup, a scientific experiment, because you haven't launched your company yet. You haven't spent a dime. You haven't hired anyone. You haven't taken anyone away from their day job. You haven't parted an innocent investor from their capital. You've actually gone out and demonstrated that a company should be built here to satisfy a market need that you've identified. That's the win right there, because now everybody, including you and your spouse and your family and your coworkers and your co-founders and your investors, now everybody's investing not in a proof of concept, but in a growth opportunity. Right? So you've moved from conceptual to established before you even started a company, just by talking to your customers and figuring out what they want to buy. That's the win right there.
And I'll tell you, when an entrepreneur is talking with me and they might have crazy ass ideas, and I'm like, okay, where's this going? And they go, oh, by the way, we have 100 people who have paid, and we don't even have a product yet. I'm like, okay, now you're on.
Now
like,
you're in.
Let's talk, right? Like
we had a client a couple of years ago come around who was talking about doing this thing that I kind of got and kind of didn't get, and had to do with key performance indicators and monitoring company progress. And I'm like, blah, 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 snooze fest. And he's like, and several people who run companies like this in the industry have invested in us already. And I'm like, where do I sign?
You're right.
Like, if you've got people with market knowledge saying, wow, you guys are doing it right, that's a proxy for me. I'm in. So 100% talk to your customers. Don't waste anybody's time, including your own. This is your life, right? And you're going to yourself and saying, my gut tells me that this will work. That's a conversation, and you deal with your gut however you see fit. But I would remind you that your gut probably has a problem with milk. So what the hell does it know? But also, no, but talking to yourself and saying, look, I've talked to 10 people and they all really love this. And they've told me why they would use it and how they would use it. And they're ready to swipe their. That's better. That's better than your gut.
Voting with your dollars, right? Like when someone has validated it with a paying customer. I love them. Those are my
Or
favorite
yeah,
entrepreneurs.
or a dozen or 100.
Yeah,
Yes, absolutely.
awesome. So, all right. So you're building this out. You're building some, cool stuff. You got your venture group over here making, making some cool deals. You got your Corex Legal that you're building an awesome team. You want to, one of the things that you told us is you want to have the happiest lawyers in the world.
Yeah,
Build a group of the happiest lawyers in the world, working where people are knocking down your door to work with you,
yeah, and the
right?
happiest clients. Yeah, absolutely.
What's the end game for this deal maker? Like what are you shooting for? You're a young dude, you're successful. Like how do you know you're winning and what's the end game?
So, the the mantra that I use when I talk to my team, when we teach them about business development and how to go out and find clients. And by the way, unlike traditional law firms, we want you to build your practice from day one, man. If you bring in a client as a first year associate, then more power to you. Um, it all comes down to this. All that matters is the smile on their face. Okay, that's basically our product. If our clients are wringing their hands, if our clients are scratching their heads, if our clients are looking at their watch going, "What the heck?" and we're doing it wrong. Okay, all of that stuff can be solved with respect, kindness, and professionalism. If you're going to be late with something, you pick up the phone. 99% of client unhappiness comes from a lack of status reports, right? I mean, you don't call your client for 2 weeks. Of course, they're going to get pissed off or at least concerned. Of course, you're going to get that voicemail that says, "Hey, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. We had that call. What's going on? I don't know what's happening. I paid my money. What are you guys doing?" And of course, worst case, they're like, "All right, you guys are jokers. I want my money back." So putting the focus on client happiness is how we run the machine, and that really is the end game for me too, Josh. I mean, I
Mm.
want to make the world a better, happier place. When I'm gone, I want people to. They're not going to talk about Britton Karch. That's fine. I don't need my name on the firm, but it'd be great if people were like, that Brent Britton. Well, we said this earlier in the call, but he made the world. He spread more joy than suffering in the balance. He gave people good jobs, and he helped people start good companies, and so that's that now. But in terms of an actual goal, I got to tell you, I don't see myself as a retired person. I never really have, to be honest. I think I will continue to hold a position. This is probably my last job. Corex Legal. My intention is to grow it to be a big global firm within the next few years. We have an office. We're headquartered in Tampa. We have an office in San Francisco. I have my eye on Boston next. Two of my alma maters are in Boston, and so I want to go up there and help those folks work together. And uh, and I'll be very happy. Will I take a month off here and there? Sure, no question. But I'll be very happy to work at Corex Legal and help smart people with good ideas make progress in the world and until I die, quite frankly.
Yeah. Super awesome. So let's go personal a little bit. Like we started out by you holding up your arms, talking about tattoos. Why were those important to you? What was your first tattoo, and why are those important to you?
my my first
Don't show
tattoo
me anything I'm not allowed to see.
my
Okay.
first tattoo was this Buddha.
Okay. Got
That's a
it.
that's a Buddha. In fact, it was this whole sleeve. This
That was your
arm is
first tattoo. Is a
yep,
full sleeve?
was my full sleeve. Yeah, and I was 46 years old when I started. So
Wow.
so this is Buddha, and he represents peace, love, and understanding, and contentment. And this is the koi fish. How do we get this on camera? Who's kind of swimming upstream there to get up to the Buddha. And the reason he's swimming upstream is because life is hard, and it's almost impossible to attain nirvana. And then back here we have the peacock. I don't know if you can see that. Do the
Well, I can't see it, and a lot of people are just listening in. So
Yeah,
that
well, so there's a peacock on the inside of my biceps, and the reason he's back there is because he's usually out strutting his stuff, and it's important to remember that your ego can get out of control from time to time.
yeah.
I am not without that fault. I tend to think a lot of myself sometimes, and it's nice to be reminded to be humble and kind. Over here we have Ganesh, who's a Hindu god of some various things, and dragons and fire, and this is another god whose name I can't think of. Um, and
But you got it tattooed on your arm and you don't remember his name?
it won't come to me. I'm bad with names. Literally, Josh, I could see you on the street, and I've known you for what, 2 or 3 months now. Your
Yeah.
name should be second nature to me, but I could see you on the street with like walking down the street with my wife, and I'd be like, "Honey, this is Jeremy." Yeah, part of my brain that deals with names is broken, and I've had to work very hard on it because people's names are one of the most important things that they love to hear. Like, if I saw you on the street and you didn't call me Brent, I'd be like, "What's up with
What's
that?"
up, dude? Yeah, right. So
Anyway, the tats for me were a long time coming. I was a sort of natural guy who you would have expected to have been tattooed earlier in life, but I just never really chose to go that way. And then I met my wife. We've been dating now for almost 10 years. I'm sorry, we were married 7 years ago, but we had our first date. It'll be 10 years ago in November, and she had some ink, and she had a bit of a back piece that was in progress, and so I kind of went with her when she was getting her back piece finished, and I really started to take an interest in getting inked myself. And we had a great guy here in Tampa do practically all of my work. I have another guy who's also awesome doing my work. But for me, it's permanent, right? I mean, this is not something that, it's not like the clothes you wear that you can change tomorrow morning. If I'm going to put something permanently on my body, it's got to have a certain amount of meaning to me, a certain amount of symbolism. I would say that my favorite tattoo in that regard is this sand dollar. It's a circle. It's got this pi symbol for the Greek letter pi, and then an infinity symbol inside the sand dollar, and that's all about my wife Marissa. She and I, we found a sand dollar on our first trip to Puerto Rico together, and a circle has no beginning and no end, and so it's all about the love, bro.
what about pi? So I understand the infinity, right? Like we're together forever in infinity, right? But why pi? Why 3.14? Blah 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 blah.
Well, if
right?
you divide a circle's circumference by its diameter, you get pi.
Pi
So
r
pi
squared.
is sort of this inherent infinity that's present in all of geometry and indeed all of the universe. And what's great about an infinite, like a completely irrational number like pi, is that it truly is infinite, which means everything's in there. Okay, if you extend pi out to infinite decimals, which is where it goes, you can find your DNA in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Millions and millions and millions of digits out, you're going to find the entire works of Shakespeare. It's infinite. That's the definition of infinity. It's going to be in there somewhere. So that's just an intriguing little mathematical / philosophical item. And I do honestly believe that, that love is the foundation of everything. And when we love one another, we are doing something that was created with the dawn of life. That the whole concept of reproduction, we are all made from all the love that ever was.
Yeah.
It's how we got here. I mean, I'm only here because my dad had my dad liked my mom's eyes. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
In the six
that's
pack of beer, right? Here we
where
are.
we all come from. So we might as well. And of course, it's stupid, and you can't say this in a business context, and you can't walk into a venture capital, deal and say, "Hey guys, it's all about the love," because people think you're smoking something. But ultimately, I think we have to find something that it's all about, and that's a pretty good answer.
Yeah, dude, I love it, man. I love
Mm-hmm.
it that you love.
Yeah.
So as we're wrapping up, behind you sits a beautiful piano, and this is kind of a personal question, right? Do you play the piano
I
at
do.
all?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Avidly. Yes.
So kind of give us some insights onto, that side of Brent, right? You're a philosopher, you're a venture capitalist, you're an attorney, you're inked up, you're cool, but yet here's a piano set behind you. Why is that
Uh,
important to you?
I have been playing piano since I could reach the keyboard. I don't know necessarily. It was just gifted to me from a young age. I had both the interest and a certain amount of aptitude. I was self-taught for many years, and then in high school I took about 6 months of lessons to learn some technique, and then I've been self-taught ever since. It's just a hobby for me. I absolutely love playing the piano. During COVID, um, I would more or less every couple of days post a video of me playing and sometimes singing to Facebook. Um, and if you go to my Facebook page, they're all out there. And very few of those videos was composed without the benefit of a certain number of glassfuls of this, that, or the other thing. But yeah, I really enjoy playing the piano. It's just, I think that a lot of folks with engineering minds enjoy the poetry of music because it is very mathematical. It's sort of a known code base, as I compared some other things earlier. But yet it's so artistic, and it gives you a certain opportunity to have a little flair. Yeah, funnily enough, I usually play Beethoven, to be honest, but the piece I've got on the piano right now is actually Killing in the Name.
Oh, Rage Against the Machines?
Yeah,
That you
yeah.
can even play that on piano? Nice. So the next time Rage is doing a tour, you could jump up there and play on a classical
Yes,
piano.
I will play keyboards for
No, we're gonna roll your huge, piano
my
up there.
Steinway, out to that'll be great.
Awesome.
But
Let's do this.
no, yeah, listen, you gotta have more stuff. There's some things that my wife and I are very active physically. I would be dead if I didn't get out and walk 2 or 3 miles at least, or run 2 or 3 miles, every day or two. Got to get in the gym, got to eat right, got to do all the stuff, man, because it's all about preserving the temple. And you got to do something besides your job. You got to have something that you're doing besides your job. And the piano's my.
So, you're awesome, man. I'm so glad to know you.
Right back at you, Josh.
Thanks, dude.
Takes one to know one.
Right. So, when it comes to deals and investing and such, I'm sure we're going to have you back on the show. Later on, but let's do this as we're running out of time. For technology startups or for companies out there that need a lawyer who gets them on the startup world and raising capital space and how to deal with that, navigate those waters, where can people connect with your law firm and start the conversation?
Sure, absolutely. I will tell you a couple of things. The first is that the website of the firm is corexlegal.com. That's corexlegal.com. You can find me, just Google Brent Britton, and you get several pages of me. And I welcome emails, I welcome phone calls, and all that information is on the website, on my bio, if nowhere else. I never get upset when clients reach me. I publish my cell phone. It's totally fine. Like if you want to engage me as a lawyer, hey, guess what? You can call me. It's totally fine. I will say this: I'm admitted and licensed to practice law in California, New York, and Florida. Most of the lawyers in my firm are admitted in either California or Florida, with a couple others here and there. But we'll talk to anybody. If you're in Texas or Illinois or Colorado, don't hesitate to give us a call. If it's really up to us to determine, the metes and bounds of what we can and cannot do for you as a lawyer without running afoul of the bar rules. But I can generally, if we're advising with respect to investors, which is going to be a federal law, or most intellectual property is going to be federal law. The state law doesn't really matter. So. Even if we don't have an office in your state yet, we'd still be delighted to talk to you and see if there's anything we can do to help. And if it turns out your thing is just going to require local counsel, then we'll help find you somebody.
Super cool.
I will say this: don't call me if you're happy with your current lawyer and they're happy with you. I am not here to divert current clients away from their current lawyer relationships. Okay. I don't steal clients from other lawyers. If you are another lawyer and you're doing corporate work for your client and you need me to do the trademark, send me that trademark, baby. I am not going to bite the hand that feeds me. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to steal your client and try to get the corporate work because that's yours. In fact, we tell a lot of the firms, around Tampa, the bigger firms who just can't justify working for unfunded tech startups because they need to get paid. That look, if you get an unfunded tech startup that you like, send them to us. If we like them, we'll work for them for a couple of years, and then guess what, dude? We'll send them back. Okay, when they're funded and they can pay your bill, we'll send them back. we're happy to play nice on the playground. But I will not steal a client from another lawyer. So if you're unhappy with your current lawyer, by all means, give me a shout. But if things are copacetic, we don't need to worry about
Cool. Cool, cool, cool. Well, what we'll do is we'll put your contact information in the show notes. So as you guys are driving around, running around, doing whatever you're doing as listeners, you can always contact our guest directly. Say, hey, heard you on the Deal Scout, and I want to do a deal with you. That's the purpose and mission of the show, is to put deals and deal makers together. All right. So if you're working on a deal and you'd like to talk about it here on the show, head on over to thedealscout.com. Fill out a quick form. Maybe get you on the show next. Till then, talk to you all on the next episode. See you guys.
Thanks, Josh.